At 24, Wei had an answer for everything. And that's exactly what destroyed him. He had built a small business from nothing, memorized every strategy book he could find, and walked into every room like a man who had already figured out what everyone else was still searching for. Sharp, confident, certain. People called him gifted. He believed them. Then, in one season, everything fell apart. The business collapsed overnight. The woman he loved walked away without looking back. His closest friend, the one he trusted with secrets, betrayed him for money. Wei woke up one cold morning, stared at his reflection, and saw a stranger. For the first time in his brilliant life, he had no answer. Not one. His mother, frightened by the emptiness in his eyes, sent him to see an old man in a quiet village 3 hours away. "He helped your grandfather once," she whispered. "Just go." Wei almost refused. What could some old village man tell him that he didn't already know? But pain has a way of making proud people humble enough to move. So he went. The old psychologist's name was Dr. Lau. He lived in a small stone house surrounded by bamboo, 2 lazy cats, and a silence so thick it made Wei uncomfortable the moment he stepped inside. When Wei sat down, he didn't wait. He launched straight into everything. The betrayal, the loss, the injustice. He spoke fast and hard like a man who had been rehearsing his pain for weeks. He talked for 20 solid minutes. Dr. Lau said absolutely nothing. He simply rose from his chair, shuffled to the kitchen, and returned with a teapot and 2 small cups. He placed one in front of Wei and began to pour. The tea filled the cup, reached the brim, then spilled, quietly streaming across the wooden table toward Wei's lap. Wei noticed the tea before he noticed the silence. "Old man, what are you doing?" Dr. Lau set the teapot down slowly. He looked at Wei with calm, unhurried eyes and said, "Before I answer that, let me tell you a story." In a village tucked between 2 mountains, there lived a cat named Mei. Mei was extraordinary. She knew which trees bore fruit in every season, which forest paths were safe, which clouds carried storms. Animals came from distant lands just to ask for her guidance. Mei was celebrated, admired, and she knew it. Then, one year, a strange and stubborn season arrived. The rivers changed course. The familiar trees went dry. Everything Mei had mastered stopped working. But instead of adapting, she kept walking the same paths, trusting the same dead trees, waiting for a world that was no longer coming back, growing thinner, more confused, more bitter. Meanwhile, a scrappy young kitten named Bao was thriving. Bao knew almost nothing, and that was his greatest advantage. He had no reputation to protect, no old maps to trust, so he simply watched. He asked the riverbirds where the water had gone. He followed the ants to new food. He made mistakes, adjusted without shame, and tried again the next morning. Within weeks, Bao had found new rivers, new trees, new paths that the changed season had quietly opened. One bitter evening, a hungry and exhausted Mei finally sat beside Old Tortoise, the most ancient creature in the mountains. She began explaining in great detail everything she knew about survival. Old Tortoise quietly picked up a bowl of warm soup and began pouring it into a smaller cup beside her. He kept pouring. The soup overflowed, spread across the ground. Still, he kept pouring. Mei stopped talking. Old Tortoise set the bowl down and looked at her with the patience of something that had lived through 100 seasons. "Your knowledge was never the problem, Mei," he said softly. "Your cup is. You are so full of everything you used to know that life cannot pour anything new into you. The season changed, but you refused to." The words landed like a stone dropped into still water. That night, alone under a sky full of cold stars, Mei made the most difficult decision of her life. She walked to where Bao was sleeping, nudged him awake, and said 4 words she had never spoken before. "Will you teach me?" Bao blinked, then smiled, and that was where May's real life began. Dr. Lau let the silence sit. Then he looked at Wei and said, "Now, before you return to me, I have a task for you." Wei straightened. "For the next 7 days, I want you to visit 5 people you have quietly looked down on: a street vendor, an old neighbor, a cleaner, someone you passed 100 times and assumed had nothing to offer you. Sit with them, look them in the eye, ask them one single question." He paused. "What is the hardest lesson life has taught you?" Then be silent. Do not advise. Do not compare. Do not teach. Simply listen. Come back and tell me what you find. Wei almost protested. He was educated, ambitious. What could a street vendor possibly teach him? But then he remembered. He had tried his own way. And his own way had left him sitting in a stranger's house with tea spilled on the table and nothing left to say. So he swallowed his pride like bitter medicine and said quietly, "All right." He came back 9 days later. He sat down differently, slower, less rigid, like something tight inside him had come loose. Dr. Lau waited. Wei was quiet for a long moment. Then, there was a woman, a vegetable seller at the morning market. I almost didn't stop. I thought, what could she possibly say? He shook his head slowly. She has lost everything. Not once, 3 times. Fire took her shop. Flood took her home. Sickness took her husband. 3 times she stood in the ruins of her own life. He paused. And when she told me, she laughed. Not a broken laugh, a real one. She said, "Every time I lost everything, I found out something about myself I never would have known otherwise." Wei did not respond immediately. He sat with those words, turned them over, realized slowly that no strategy book, not one, had ever said something that honest. "I have been treating this failure like it is the end of my story," he finally said. "But she made me feel like maybe it is the first honest page." Dr. Lau said nothing for a moment. Then he smiled, slow and warm, like a man watching the sun finally rise after a very long night. "Now," he said gently, "your cup has room in it. Now we can begin." Wei left that village a different man. Not fixed, not fully healed, but open. And open is where everything starts. Because here is what no achievement, no title, no amount of cleverness will ever teach you on its own. The cup was never the enemy. It was simply full of the wrong things. Pride disguised as confidence, fear disguised as certainty. Yesterday's maps in the hands of a man standing in tomorrow's territory. Empty it. Not because you are weak, not because everything you built was worthless, but because the most powerful thing a brilliant mind can ever do is choose to become a student again. Empty your cup and watch what life has been waiting to pour into you.